Welcome to this explainer. Today we are tackling a truly massive, mythic, and just absolutely awe-inspiring topic. We're talking about Yggdrasil, the cosmic world tree of Norse mythology. And you know, this isn't just a fun story about a giant piece of wood. It's actually a fascinating window into how ancient people understood the very framework of reality itself.
To get us started, I want you to just take a second and think about this question. What actually holds the entire universe together? Today, modern science gives us these complex answers involving gravity, dark matter, and quantum mechanics, right? But if you were a Norse pagan living centuries ago, your answer was wildly different, yet undeniably beautiful. You didn't look up to invisible forces in some cold, empty vacuum. Instead, you looked to a gigantic, living, breathing ash tree, a tree whose branches literally held up the heavens and whose roots grasped the deep underworld.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, the center of the cosmos. Then 2, the dark origins of Yggdrasil. 3, creatures of the world tree. 4, shamanism, survival, and Ragnarok. And finally, 5, Yggdrasil in modern times.
Let's jump right in with Section 1, the center of the cosmos, an immense ash tree.
According to 13th century sources like the Poetic and Prose Eddas, Yggdrasil isn't just some poetic metaphor. It is the holy ash tree that physically anchors the 9 worlds. And what's truly mind-blowing is just how active this cosmic pillar is. Every single day, the Aesir, which is the principal pantheon of Norse gods, literally ride their horses across a burning rainbow bridge called Bifrost, all just to assemble and hold their courts at the base of this tree. I mean, it's essentially the ultimate governing center of the entire universe.
And mapping out the geography of this tree is super interesting. It's basically tethered by 3 massive roots that extend into completely different realms, and each root is anchored by a really powerful body of water. So the first root reaches up into Asgard, the heavens, where it taps into Urdarbrumr, the well of destiny. The second root stretches out to the realm of the Frostjotnir drinking from Mimisburnr, which is the well of wisdom. And then that third root? It plunges way down into the dark, misty underworld of Niflheim and Hell, ending at Hörgelmir, the spring of serpents. It's like the entire Norse cosmos is perfectly balanced and tied together by just these 3 roots.
Moving on to Section 2, the dark origins of Yggdrasil, etymology and mystery.
Okay, so this brings us to a crucial point, the name itself. You might naturally assume that the Tree of Life would have some peaceful, nurturing name, right? Well, not exactly. Yggdrasil actually translates to Odin's horse. See, in Old Norse poetry, they use these complex metaphors called kennings, and the horse of the hanged is a classic kenning for a gallows. Since Yggd is one of Odin's many names and Drasil means horse, the generally accepted meaning of Yggdrasil is literally Odin's gallows. Yep, the beautiful, life-giving center of the cosmos is named after an instrument of execution.
To really understand why, we have to look at this incredible primary text from the poem Havamal. Odin says, "I know that I hung on a windy tree 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, myself to myself." This is such a raw, powerful story. It's all about Odin sacrificing himself, starving, pierced by his own spear, hanging from the branches of the world tree just so he could peer into the depth below and gain the magical knowledge of the runes to eventually share with humanity.
Now, linguistic detectives are actually still untangling this ancient knot today. While Odin's gallows is the most widely accepted translation, there are definitely other theories out there. Some scholars suggest it just means tree of terror, taking Igra to simply mean terror. Others propose it means U-pillar. But I have to say, scholar Anatoly Lieberman's theory is incredibly compelling. He argues that the name originally referred to Odin's literal horse, the 8-legged creature that shared the god's essence. And over time, the phrase, the ash tree of Odin's horse, just got a bit confusing in oral tradition, so the name Yggdrasil ended up being transferred directly onto the world tree itself.
Let's step into Section 3, creatures of the world tree, the inhabitants of the ash.
You see, Yggdrasil isn't just a static wooden structure. It's a bizarre and wildly active ecosystem. But it's an ecosystem built on stark mythic tension. Way up at the very top, sitting high in the branches, is a wise eagle. And resting right between that eagle's eyes is a hawk named Verdfalnir. Meanwhile, all the way down at the absolute bottom, beneath the root in Niflheim, you have this monstrous dragon, or worm, named Nidhugger, along with more serpents than you can count, and they are constantly gnawing at the tree's roots. So you basically have the noble creatures of the sky locked in this perpetual silent standoff with the destructive, chaotic forces of the underworld.
But actually, it's not totally silent, because bridging this gap is Ratatoskr.
He is a squirrel whose entire mythological job is to scamper up and down the trunk of this cosmic tree, carrying malicious gossip and insults between the eagle and the dragon. I mean, I absolutely love that detail. Meanwhile, out on the branches you have 4 massive stags roaming around, constantly eating the foliage. With all this damage happening all the time, the tree actually requires daily magical maintenance. That's where the Norns come in. They are 3 powerful maidens of destiny, Urd, Verdandi, and Skold. Every single day, they draw water and mud from their sacred well and pour it over the tree just to keep its branches from rotting away.
I want to pause real quick on the number 4. Those 4 stags, Dane, Dvalin, Dunir, and Durathror, they're actually vital to understanding the whole Norse worldview. Yggdrasil is the noblest of all trees, but as Odin states in the poem Grimnismal, it suffers agony more than men know. It's bitten from above, it rots on its sides, and a dragon tears at it from below. So it is absolutely a symbol of life, for sure, but it's a life that is constantly enduring hardship, decay, and this unending need for renewal. Which brings us to Section 4, Shamanism, Survival, and Ragnarok, the cycle of destruction and rebirth.
So what is the actual historical root of all this belief? Well, it's fascinating because we can trace Yggdrasil back to real-world ancient practices. Scholar Hilda Ellis Davidson points out that this whole concept of a central tree rising through multiple worlds is actually a shared piece of shamanic lore found all across northern Eurasia. Siberian shamans, for example, used a central tree as a literal and spiritual ladder to ascend into the heavens. And this deeply ancient conception was very likely inspired by the pole star, the fixed center of the night sky. It makes a central cosmic axis a supernatural symbol for early peoples trying to make sense of the universe.
So if this tree is the center of absolutely everything, what happens during Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the Norse world? Well, it's quite the dramatic cycle. Pre-Ragnarok, Yggdrasil stands as the glorious green center of the cosmos. But at the onset of Ragnarok, as the giant forces of chaos break loose, the old tree literally shivers and groans in agony. Yet remarkably, it doesn't fall. Post-Ragnarok, something really beautiful happens. The tree becomes the ultimate sanctuary. 2 humans, Leif and Lifrasir, actually survived the utter destruction of the world by hiding deep within the wood of the tree, only emerging later to repopulate a newly reborn Earth. Now, if you dig into the lore, you might see these human survivors linked to a place called Hodmimus Holt, which translates to Hord Mimir's Wood. You'll also see references to another celestial tree called Mimamyr, but don't let the names trip you up. Scholars like Rudolf Simek and John Lindo believe these aren't separate, confusing forests. They're almost certainly just poetic alternative names for Yggdrasil itself. Think about it, the very tree that birthed humanity. Remember, the first humans, Asker and Embla, were created from trees, is the exact same tree that protects humanity during the apocalypse, perfectly repeating the cycle of creation.
Finally, Section 5, Yggdrasil, in modern times, pop culture, and legacy.
The legacy of this 13th century textual concept is just staggering when you really look at it. The World Tree is still brilliantly framing the universes of our biggest modern pop culture franchises today. For example, in the hit Japanese anime and light novel series Overlord, the sprawling digital game that the protagonist gets trapped in is literally named Yggdrasil. And of course, if you've watched the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from the very first Thor movie to Captain America, all the way to the recent Loki series, Yggdrasil is this constant recurring visual and thematic motif used to explain how different dimensions and timelines are woven together. The ancient Norse blueprint for the universe is, incredibly, still our absolute favorite way to imagine the modern multiverse.
And that leaves us with one final, lingering thought to close out this explainer. Why does humanity consistently look to massive, ancient trees as our ultimate symbols of life, endurance, and cosmic rebirth? From the shamans of ancient northern Eurasia to our modern blockbuster films, we seem to be deeply, fundamentally rooted in the idea that even when the entire universe groans and shivers, the tree stands tall, protecting the seeds of tomorrow. Definitely something to think about the next time you're looking up at a towering oak or ash in your local park. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the branches of Yggdrasil. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.